webinar during the Oh, thank you so much for reminding me to record. So during the webinar, we will share a survey link for your feedback. The link will be posted in the chat at the 30-minute mark and every 15 minutes afterwards. Your input helps us improve and design programming that better meets the needs of our system. We appreciate your time in completing it. Lastly, while @ONE provides badges for course completion, we do not offer a badge for attending this webinar. However, if your institution requires proof of attendance for flex credit or professional advancement, please stay till the end, complete the survey, and request a copy of your responses via the Google form. Thank you so much. I'll go ahead and turn it into Anna Mills. Thank you so much, Anna.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. This is such a wonderful series. I'm really honored to be part of it. So I'm going to dive right in and kind of let you know a little bit about what we're going to do today. I'm going to put a link to the slides in the chat, so you'll have that all along, if it lets me. We're going to frame this a little bit different from some other AI workshops in terms of kind of being very forthright about the phenomenon of AI overwhelm and the need for sort of lower cognitive load approaches to AI. And that's what I hope to share today by giving you a tour of Khanmigo Teacher Tools as a way to sort of kind of build AI literacy with some support and explore what we might want to do with AI, if anything. And we'll have some time to experiment and share in the middle. And then I'll share some other strategies, sort of easy ways to get more out of AI, applications that I use all the time, and things to try outside of Khanmigo Teacher Tools. And we'll have a little more time to experiment and share after that. So that is my basic simple plan. Feel free to share comments, questions in the chat. If you have something you definitely want me to address, you might put it in the Q&A, and I will stop kind of at the end of sections. So if I miss something as I go, I'll try to catch up with that at the end of the section. But definitely feel free to chime in. So, and yeah, awesome that people are introducing themselves in the chat. So I teach English at College of Marin currently. If you want to put your name and where you teach and what you teach, that would be awesome. Greetings, everyone. So, I sometimes, I give a lot of AI workshops and I attend a lot, and one thing that feels important to me that we don't always do is just to welcome all of the emotions that we might have about AI, whether good or bad. I think this plays a big role in how we engage with this technology. And I like to be honest about it and really witness it. There are lots of reasons to be excited, but there are also ways in which we get pressured to be excited. And, just to be thought that we're with the times moving forward, not missing something. There's that sense of, is it real excitement or is it AI hype? And some of the other feelings that go along for me, even though this is something I'm now pretty familiar with after focusing on it for almost 3 years now, but a sense of overwhelm. It's so complex, it's changing so fast, it can be used in so many ways, so many implications for society, our careers, our students' futures. It's quite overwhelming to me, and I know to many other folks. We might feel angry or sad. There's a sense that this is coming at us. We haven't chosen it as teachers. We haven't had a whole lot of say in how it's unfolding in society. We have a lot else that's incredibly challenging and pressing for us right now. And, this is sort of might feel like another thing. And we might have feelings about how AI has been created, the ethics of it, the politics of it, etc. And lastly, we might feel scared or unsettled. I know my partner almost doesn't want to hear about AI because it's very unsettling to him. And there is this sense of big questions about humanity, agency. AI is doing things that only humans did previously. So is it encroaching on us? What role is it going to play in the future? What role will it play in our lives? Um, so I just want to welcome all those feelings. And, there may be something really useful we can learn from each of them in terms of how we want to take action, how we want to relate to AI. There's not a wrong way to react. And I think we need the negative emotions as well as the positive. Um, and kind of in the same way, I want to acknowledge that, I often hear a reference to like workshops that say, we're going to teach you the ethical way to use AI, or we want to teach students the ethical way. And I feel like it's a lot more complicated than that. There's not necessarily a pure path where everything is fine. The ethics of AI are really complicated. There are a lot of real concerns about the energy and water use, about copyright questions and how the systems were trained, about ways in which they sometimes plagiarize or don't cite the work of artists or writers, about the labor conditions of people who are helping to build the systems, often in developing nations. Um, so I just want to say that, I'm not going to focus on that in this workshop. I do have a workshop coming up later that will focus a bit more on ethics and how we can try to reduce some of those harms and think about moving forward. That's coming up in April 22nd. But I just want to acknowledge it and share a link to kind of my personal response. I felt like I should share with students why I am using AI, even though I take those concerns seriously and I don't feel like I have all the answers to them. So I put a link there to, it's part of my OER textbook on AI, where I basically say, I'm choosing to use it. I think it's more about how these systems develop than whether they develop. And I hope that by building AI literacy, I can have some effect on the how, and reducing the harms, maybe pushing for regulation. So, beyond the feelings, the ethical concerns, there are these big questions about what do we do about it? What is it now? How is it changing? Social media and news coverage of it is often described as a fire hose. I would say that's true since I try to keep up with it and it's impossible. So I think there's a real temptation as we start to think about all these things just to need a break and kind of need to shut down, especially if we have other priorities in our teaching, which we should, right? So despite all that, I'm hoping to offer kind of an easier way in today because I do feel like we do need to engage. I think that the AI is more like the internet than it is like something like the metaverse or MOOCs, things that, didn't turn out to be as big a deal as some people said. I think that AI is more on the scale of the internet where it is powerful, it is practical, it is going to be part of future workplaces. Um, we need to know something about how other people are using it and how we might use it, so that we can really make informed choices. And because we're educators, our students are the ones who have, fewer background, less knowledge than we do, and they're facing navigating a world with AI for the rest of their lives. And they need us to understand it and be something of a guide, or at least be present with them, investigating it and talking about it. Not just as people who know how to criticize it, but as people who've experienced how it could be useful. So that's kind of my answer to there is something of a movement of folks who want to say, no, we shouldn't be using it. We shouldn't be inviting students to use it. And those are kind of my reasons for saying I do think we should. But given all that, how can we turn it around and think about saner ways to engage if it's so overwhelming? It has kind of taken over my career and my intellectual life, which is exciting as well as overwhelming. But I don't think it should take over everybody's life, right? I think that my colleagues have very good reasons for continuing to focus on other things and to put AI in a limited place in their heads. Um, so I really look to Ethan Mollick. He's a Wharton Business School professor who is a big spokesperson on AI and AI in education. He says you need 10 sleepless nights to understand AI. And I am not willing to give it that, but I have spent a lot of time with it. But that's a little much, right? And I think that if we're trying to think about where do I start, that's a little more limited than that. A chatbot can feel overwhelming in itself. It's a really simple interface. ChatGPT, you talk to it, or Google's Gemini or Claude, any of these chatbots, but it's so open-ended. What do we do with it? Exactly how and when do we use it? Those questions in themselves are overwhelming and take a lot of cognitive load. But I don't think it has to be overwhelming. So I do think it can be fun and useful, and that we can do it more on our own terms. And it can be something that we choose to do to support our own goals as teachers, complement our own processes, our own thinking. It doesn't have to be autocomplete the work. It can support our thinking. And the fun thing about it is that it does open up a new set of options for things that might be habitual, for workflows that might be habitual. So it is interesting, kind of exciting to think about, how could I do this differently? Is there something I would want to try with AI at this moment, especially if I'm stuck with something? You will hear some pretty dramatic statements about how great AI is. Even back in 2023, people were saying it's like collaborating with an alien. Everything is becoming much easier. What used to take me half an hour now takes 1 minute. I don't know if maybe some of you would feel that way. Others might say it's not that good. But I think it's worth testing. We need to test it ourselves, and we need to test it with some of the better systems available to kind of answer the question of how useful could it be. And I'm a big fan of scaffolding and some simple interfaces, scaffolding for teachers as well as for students, because we're learning this. So Khanmigo Teacher Tools offers sort of a limited set of options that might raise our awareness of ways we could use this in our teaching. And it kind of guides us through those uses. And to me, that's a relief, to have that set of options in front of me and to be asked just 1 or 2 simple questions and then getting an AI result. And also, it's nice that it's part of software that we already use, which is Canvas. So these are reasons why I think it's a good way in, a gentle way in. And so that's kind of my introduction, and I will move on to the tour, but feel free to put questions or comments about any of that in the chat. I feel like I just gave a big speech, so please speak back to me. Tell me if any of it resonates or doesn't seem quite right to you. But I do want to sort of set the context. California community colleges have access to Khanmigo Teacher Tools in Canvas. And this is part of our existing contract with Instructure that provides us with Canvas. It's not something we're paying additional for. It's available to all campuses in the system. And what does that mean? I think that a lot of us, when we first heard about it, thought that meant Khanmigo, the tutoring system, which also exists and is part of Khan Academy, and is aimed at students. But this is not for students. This is for us. This is a set of ways to get assistance with common teaching tasks like course and lesson planning. And it doesn't include AI grading or feedback. Khanmigo has a separate system, a writing coach that I'm not going to cover today that is aimed at students. But this is a system that doesn't access our course materials or student data. So it's pretty limited. And I think that's another reason why it's a good place to start, because we're not worrying about feeding student work to it and concerns about, is this the right thing pedagogically? This is something we can engage with for ourselves first to build AI literacy.
And a real quick question, I received that some individuals don't see Khanmigo on their Canvas at their college. Do they need to go in and activate that feature? Because I know all campuses should have it.
Yeah, so I do have some screenshots a little later on about where to look and what to do. You might need to request from your Canvas administrator that they turn it on. But even if it's not enabled in Canvas, you actually can just use it through the Khan Academy site and get the same functionality. So today you'll be able to do that, whether or not you have it in Canvas. Yeah, so I'll give the link in a minute. Unless if you want it right now, I can jump ahead and get it. But I was going to kind of give the tour and then give the time for experimenting. It's right on the Khan Academy website for teachers. You just make an account and then it's free for teachers. But you'll see here, it is nice to have it in Canvas so that it's where we already are. You can see that it's showing up with my regular course navigation, and down at the bottom here is that navigation button for Khanmigo Teacher Tools. The students don't see that, only the teachers. So what are the options? The basic interface is just a landing page with a bunch of different ways AI might help us in preparing teaching materials or writing recommendation letters, discussion prompts, quiz questions. They have a bunch that are for rewriting texts at different levels of difficulty. I'm not sure, to what extent that's as useful in higher ed as in K-12. But certainly things like learning objectives, rubric generator are clearly common tasks that we would be working with. And you can star your favorites. So this is a list of the ones I thought were most relevant, but there are more as well. So I think I mentioned some of these already. So you can do multiple choice quiz questions, open-ended ones, discussion questions. You can give it text to go on. So you can tell it, here's the reading, give me discussion questions. You can get ideas for lesson plans or lesson hooks, how to make something relevant to a class where there's a particular set of interests or background that's common. And you can do recommendation letters. Again, it's not pulling anything from Canvas about the student, so we have to tell it whatever we want it to know about the student. And already I have some mixed feelings here because I don't want to give up all my lesson planning. I don't want to skip engaging with thinking through what's important, what makes sense, given my experience as a teacher for this class that I know right now. So, I'm not seeing that menu and thinking, great, I don't have to do those things anymore. It's more like I have a support. I have something that will give me ideas or a draft. Sometimes I will use it, sometimes I won't. And that's the reason I think, we want to make that case that there's some assistance here, but it shouldn't be a justification for increasing teacher workloads. Because this is complementary. It's not going to take over for what we already do. But it might allow us to do more of what we would love to do in our teaching. So, and the reason for that in part is just to remind ourselves that that these are not teachers. They don't have intention, they don't have relationship. They are word calculators, they're statistical predictors. Yes, they have gleaned a lot about patterns of human communication from all the text on the internet, but ultimately they don't have intention, they don't have judgment. I don't want to let a system like that tell me what to do in my classroom, you know? So we gotta value our own expertise, even as we maybe sometimes marvel at these systems. So just an example, this is the question generator, and you'll see how it's really simple. It doesn't ask you very many questions. It just tells you, okay, what's your grade level? How many questions do you want? And what's the text you want it to ask questions about. So in this example, I copied and pasted in a page from my OER textbook to get questions about that. And you can paste up to 4,500 words. So they give you a little box, but you actually can put a lot in there. So, the plus side is that it's kind of a relief that it's so simple. The downside is you can't customize the instructions at that point very much, and you can't upload files. But there will be ways to customize after you get a draft from it in Khanmigo. So I just had to know how to go from PDF to text. So I had to download the PDF from my textbook and then upload it to Google Drive and open it as a Google Doc and then copy and paste that text. There's probably other ways to do that, but that's the little hassle with Khanmigo, is having to copy paste. But we do have some decent assurances that the data is going to be kept private, whatever we're sharing with it, that it won't be sold to third parties, and it won't be used to train new AI models. However, we do get the warning that you shouldn't include any personally identifiable information. So basically, we shouldn't be sharing student work with it, and we should be cautious of whatever we're sharing that's about ourselves as well. So then once I filled out that very simple form, it just gives me a list of questions, and I can edit them directly in there. It's like a word processing space, and I can save my documents there within Khanmigo, which I have in Canvas. And then the thing that I didn't realize at first, I don't think it's as obvious in the user interface, but you can chat with it and you can highlight things and ask it to change them. So here I highlighted this one question, and then I get this little bar over here that has an edit sign, a refresh sign, and a comment sign. And I can use that to ask it to make changes, and it will let me tell it what kind of changes to make. So like here, I thought, oh, it's asking that question about a vocabulary word, but I don't really want it to focus on the vocabulary word as much as the concept. So I told it, don't use the vocab. And I press enter, and it will give me a new version of that one question. Or if I press the dialog bubble icon, it will open a chat window where it will, quote, discuss whatever I highlighted. It will just sort of talk about it and why it's there, and I can continue and respond to that. So this is where it gets to be more like a chatbot, like you're using ChatGPT. You have this window here and it will respond, and I can have a dialogue with it for as long as I want and keep pushing it to revise or give me something different. or explain it. And that's really where the power is. So I think that's the number one like AI literacy lesson I would say we could take away is just not to accept the first version, and not to assume that's all AI can do because that's what it's given us on the first round. So like here I just said, revise the questions to make them multiple choice and make sure the incorrect options are plausible. And it redid the quiz, but I wasn't satisfied still. I said, you know, it's giving a bunch of answers that are just so obviously wrong. It almost seems disrespectful to the students. So I kind of gave it the same direction again because it still hadn't done what I told it. So I didn't stop. I just kept pushing and told it the same thing in another way. And that time I did get what I thought were better results. So one little tip that I don't know how many folks have been using a voice mode, but this feels a little different, but if you're a person who likes to do things in different modalities, besides just working with visual text, you can actually just do all this by speech. So it has a little microphone there to turn on speech recognition so I can talk to it. And it will also, if I want, will read out its answers in synthetic voice. Yeah. So that's like the quick tour of Khanmigo Teacher Tools and one of the kinds of things it can do. There's more support. I wrote a kind of an overview of it that assessed the app as far as how it supports faculty AI literacy. And you can read that assessment that I did. There's a teacher guide from Khanmigo and one from Instructure. And there's even a little Khanmigo for Educators course that's pretty simple. It's in Khan Academy, and it's just a series of videos and questions about them. So you can explore it further with those supports.
Anna, we got an interesting question that came in.
Yeah.
Do you mind answering it now?
Ooh, that's a great question. How do you convert the it's in the Q&A. Let me bring up the Q&A. How do you convert the questions that you get there into QTI format? I think that's where you would want to work with a chatbot like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to help you with that conversion, because there's no automated conversion between Khanmigo and the Canvas formats, unfortunately. You could try in the chat. I haven't tried to see if it will generate that. I think it's XML for the QTI format. You could try that in Khanmigo, but I haven't tested it. I would be a little bit more hopeful that it would do a better job in, say, ChatGPT or Claude. But I think that's the next step, is a better Canvas integration. So I want to just give folks some time to play with this and see how it goes and see if any of this seems useful or interesting, what problems you're running into, make sure that it's available to you. So first step would be to see if it's already in your Canvas course menu, which it might be if your administrator has set it that way. But if it's not, you want to see if you can enable it in your Canvas navigation by going to settings and then clicking the navigation tab. And if your administrator has allowed it, you might see it in the list down below of disabled items. And you can move it up to enable it by clicking the 3 dots and choosing enable. And so if it's not in either of those places, then in the long term, you can reach out to your Canvas administrator and share the CVC at one's guidance on Khanmigo and instructions. And they might then review it and decide if they're going to enable it. But in the meantime, or if they've decided not to enable it, you can use the same tools by going to this link that I just put in the chat. And either way, yeah, so if you've been able to enable it, great. You can click on it from Canvas and try it there. If not, you just go to that link, and either way, you'll need to create a Khan Academy account, and you'll have the same options available to you. So just take a minute to set that up, to create that free account. If your kids ever do Khan Academy, then you might already have one. And I want to just take 10 minutes now for us to play and experiment. And, you can ask questions during those 10 minutes. I'm just going to hang out. Or I can show something, if you're running into any questions. But so explore the options, try something that might actually be useful to you, that you can imagine being useful to you. Review those results and ask at least one for at least one revision. So try out those tools where you highlight it and you ask it to revise. I like the little refresh button because sometimes I get a result and I don't love it, but I can't really think why or how I want it to be better. And I just want to see something else. Give me another version. So pressing that refresh button just gets you a different AI response. And sometimes I want to see 3 or 4 before and just pick one, right? So try something, give it at least one follow-up instruction or ask for a new version. Try out that chat pane on the side. It's not, let me go back to show you that where to find the chat pane. It is on the side with these eyes, these little eyes. That's the Khanmigo icon. And so you will just see the document at first, but then if you press the eye icon on the side here, it will open up a side chat window. All right, so I'll go back to the instructions here. And whenever you do have something interesting to share, maybe in 10 minutes, I'm going to put this poll in the chat for each person to share something about what you tried, how it went, whether or how you think any of this might be useful to you in future, what else you might want to try that you haven't yet. Just share one thing, one sentence is plenty if you want, but you can share more on this poll, and then we'll kind of get a sense of the range of experiments in the room. Any questions or anybody running into trouble just getting in?
I have a question. I'm in, so it looks like they want me to onboard a course which has different steps to it, learning about the academy. Am I in the right spot? I don't see an option to
Yeah, but you
create
shouldn't have to take the course. Once you're logged in, if you go back to that same link, the Khanmigo Teacher Tools, do you see the options or not yet?
So, okay, AI for teachers within the academy. Is that the one where I should be in?
Yeah.
Okay, I was not in the right spot. Got it.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks. Eric is commenting that it has been useful as a tool for you, and that if you already have a Khanmigo account outside of Canvas, you can link it so you can use that same account. So your same data will show up in Canvas. That's a great point. I'm curious, Eric, which of the types of assistants you've used the most?
I used the lesson planner
Mhm,
and discussions. But I
mhm.
also downloaded, I trained on campus, so I showed the 300, actually two other schools, and I showed them the fun poem one.
Oh, okay.
They loved it. It was they loved it. And I showed them the question quiz maker and the rubric. They love the rubric. They some people were still confused, thinking that the rubric should tie in the Canvas rubric. I said, no, 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 no. It's two different tools. And I said, that's where you come in. You're the teacher. You just take from that and put it into Canvas rubrics. So I'm getting some mixed vibes on it, but it's like I keep telling everybody, just continue using it, play with it. It's fun until but you have to keep at it.
That's interesting. Yeah. So definitely people not always loving the first thing it gives them. Um, but if you keep at it, maybe you're going to get something better. Um, and it is a little bit of a hassle to copy and paste from the rubric it gives you into the Canvas rubric tool. And the Canvas rubric tool itself is a little clunky, I would say. But so yeah, I can empathize with that. Um, I didn't find the rubric it gave me to be perfect off the bat. But I think giving it the text of my assignment helps to get with getting a better rubric. Um, and I just love knowing that if I'm stuck or if it just feels like too much, there's no way I'm going to be able to create a rubric right now. It is something that gets me going, even if seeing its version and thinking, oh, that's no good, I feel more energized to say what does need to be in the rubric. Yeah, letter of recommendation was a surprise. Adrian says that's a good point. I was a little nervous about that because I thought, well, what student data are we giving it? And does that make the letter of recommendation less valuable? But I think that if I'm telling it things about the student that I've come up with, and I'm still doing that thinking about my relationship with the student and my observations, so it doesn't feel as completely automated. I haven't done that yet myself. Yeah, and it's totally fine to just kind of watch and listen if you're not ready to do the Khanmigo, but you don't need Canvas also. If folks who are joining who are not using Canvas, you can also just use this on their main site. Yeah.
Anna, this is Eric again. I'm sorry, I don't want to take over or anything. But I want to share there's a really good book that kind of gives you an idea about this tool. It's called A New World by Zaman Khan.
Mhm.
My colleagues, Sue is on here with me too, but she introduced us the book a couple months ago, and it's such a good book. It's light reading. It's about AI in education, why it's a good thing. So take a read at it. It's a great book.
Thank you. Yes, I was just looking at that and thinking I need to listen to that as an audiobook. It's Brave New Words by Salman Khan, right? And he's the founder of Khan Academy. Um, yes, I definitely want to read that. Thank you for that recommendation. Um, and L. Dimopoulos is asking, do I know if Khanmigo understands terms like lexile levels or how to tailor content to make material relevant across various student populations, like first-year experience or learners that prefer different modalities or languages? So, I mean, I wouldn't trust it to do it perfectly, but it does, when you do the text leveler option, it does ask you for the grade level, and you could play with that. So, if it's not giving you what you consider to be the right Lexile level, then you would just go up a grade level or down a grade level. And you can give it instructions to tailor in whatever way you want. But I don't think it's been tested as to in a systematic way as to how good it is at doing that. I think it's really about our judgment in reviewing it at this point. But as you point out, there's a lot of potential there to customize materials without as much labor as it would otherwise take. So there's a lot of possibility that that we could produce more modalities or more, areas of interest in the materials we share, or tailor to different levels. And that's one of the possible strengths of AI. I haven't tried it with other languages, but I think you can set your language in Khanmigo. And you can also set your interests or preferences. And so when you're in Khanmigo, you can, if you go to preferences, one of the things is interests. It might take me too long to bring it up now, but yeah, maybe I will take a moment to do that. Yeah, Gregory's asking if there's a way to give students access to the Lexile level. At this point, there's no way to give students access to this tool. But we would be, we could certainly create multiple versions and put all of those versions into a Canvas assignment and then tell students that they can choose. Or into, a Google Doc with multiple tabs for different levels. But we would have to create that as far as the assignment structure and copy and paste into it. Yeah. So just take another couple minutes of experimenting or asking questions. And I'm going to bring up that, show you those little customization features as well. Yeah, I love that Cheryl is saying you can mix the results of different tools like a lesson hook and a lesson plan. I have not tried the writing coach, but I definitely have that on my list to do soon. I work with a different AI essay feedback app that I've been involved with called My Essay Feedback. So I've been a little bit, not necessarily ready to switch platforms, but I am really curious about how they've designed it. Yeah, I think that as far as peer tutors, if they're that would be interesting. If they're given a role as a tutor in the class, I think it would depend on what their role is in the Canvas course. But I think that they could also just sign up on the Khan Academy website. And they do have some kind of I think if they have an EDU address and they're certifying that they're an educator, they'll be able to use it. Oh, that's frustrating. Somebody's having some trouble connecting to the school email. I'm not sure about that. Okay, so I was just going to show how you can customize. So it's not available on the very landing page, which is a little confusing, but if you go into one of the options, you will see these 3 dots at the top right of the screen. And that's where you get these additional options. You can actually see your own chat history, which is nice. And you can go to preferences and you'll see that you can set the reading style. So you can put it, I think by default, it's on simple, but you can ask for it to be standard or professional. And you can set your default language. You can choose from 3 different voices if you're going to ask it to talk to you. And then if you click on interests, it'll launch the Khan Academy site where you can customize your, you can turn on interests and tell it what your interests are. And it looks like it's sort of spying on me and guessing my interests here based on my past conversations. And I've allowed it to do that, but I could also turn that off. And then I can set those same preferences that I set over in Canvas as well. So let me see. I'm hoping folks have added to that Mentimeter. I know it's great putting stuff in the chat too, but oh, awesome. So folks are sharing a little bit about what you've done. Yeah, I wish it could generate a QTI file, but actually I hope you'll test that, because it might. It certainly, you know, these systems can generate code, so they should be able to generate QTI, even if it wasn't perfect. They could do a draft of it. Oh, interesting. Someone says that I sometimes tend to be wordy and complex, and it's been helpful with that. Yeah, it has a clear directions option. And I've also thought about asking it, you know, how could I streamline this assignment, because my instructions are so long. And so, yeah, it's a great way to sort of work on things that we have in our minds that we want to improve on, but how do I get that support or feedback to do it? Let's see. Yeah, so it sounds like maybe I can to help folks troubleshoot and stay on a little after if you're having trouble getting in. Because I would hope, yeah, they should be able to let you in, even if we need to ask for the Khanmigo support. Human decision still required. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. I'm working with PlayLab and Nectar. Nectar is a different teaching assistance app, I believe. I haven't tried that one. Curious if you want to recommend it. PlayLab is a site where educators can create custom chatbots for specific tasks, and we can also see what other educators are using AI for and use their bots. So I do really recommend PlayLab as well as a place to explore. Yeah, thank you for saying that you need more time. I debated how much time to give, because I know you want to also get more active things out of the, things from me out of the workshop, but I appreciate 10 minutes is not enough time to make a judgment about it. And thanks for sharing that. Interesting. I'm curious what field that is that they don't apply to. Someone says, well, thank you for sharing, folks. And I will come back to this list. So I did want to share some other kind of easy, but maybe not obvious things to do. As some of you were discovering, we might hit limits of what we can do in Khanmigo. Or we might hit questions about how do I get the most out of it if I'm not loving the first result. And I think the other thing that helps with the overwhelm for me for AI is remembering that in a way, we actually have a lot of skills and advantages here as educators who probably have worked a lot on our communication skills that apply directly to interacting with these systems. We're probably more aware of our own thinking and learning and work processes as we help students become aware of those. And, you know, this is not a technical thing in many ways. People call it prompt engineering, but really many have said that's a misnomer because using that kind of self-awareness and communication skills is really the core of what will help with getting the most out of AI. So, you know, the biggest rule, okay, I'm not a believer in the prompt engineering advice that has acronyms and like lots of things you're supposed to include in your prompts when you talk to AI, because I find that overwhelming. I'm not going to use it as often if I have to give it a role and give it an example and give it a context and tell it what kind of output and, you know, tell it something about my back. Like it's too much. I can't do that every time. But if I can start with something really simple in Khanmigo or even in a regular chatbot, I can just say, you know, I'm trying to write a report on this. And then from there, I can get more specific if I need to. So if it gives me something that's not quite right, maybe then I tell it more. And I give it what I have to go on, any text that I have that's helping me figure out what to write. So getting specific helps, but don't feel like you have to give it every detail every time. Here's an example in Khanmigo where I used a sample quiz that's in my OER textbook, thinking maybe I can get some more things of the same style and quality if I give it that sample quiz and I give it, you know, a different chapter or section from the textbook. And again, like keep trying, keep pushing it. The thing that's really freeing to me that I've heard Ethan Mollick do is just be really frank with it. Whatever I'm thinking when I read that output, I can tell it. I can say, take out the cliches or focus more on that, something else, or just try again, make it better, make it more interesting. We can be very frank with it and that's a way to move forward and we can keep going, right? Yeah, I love that from Lori that that you learn to include statements that help AI control bias. Yes, I've done that as well. I think they've even done some studies where if people told it not to be biased, it actually was less biased in some regard. So it's always worth trying, just telling it the thing that we want. So, you know, if it doesn't do what you tell it, like in this case, I gave it all these examples of the kind of quiz I wanted, and it gave me back a quiz that was totally different and not multiple choice. And I just said, try again, but use the example I gave you. You know, sometimes you have to tell it multiple times and it's a little bit squirrely, as some people say. But don't give up. Another technique that is pretty simple, but has been shown to be very useful is to tell it to sort of slow down and take a process step by step. So in this case, I told it, spend some more time reflecting on the chapter before you write the quiz. Take that process step by step. I don't even have to tell it what the steps are, but sometimes just telling it to slow down can help. Or I could describe the steps for it that I want it to follow. If you want, you can cast it. You can be the director. You can imagine a role for it, right, in the style of a friendly, encouraging peer mentor teacher who is an expert in teaching for equity, whatever it is that you would love to have. So we can play with that in an imaginative way if we want. And, you know, I think I'll stop there because it's easy to give like a million ideas about prompting, but really the most important thing is just to try to communicate what we're thinking and what we want and not to get stuck having to do it perfectly. But you will find this piece that I wrote about prompting for students that kind of elaborates on this same philosophy. in the slide deck if you want to find more. And there's a bunch of links to more about prompting there. The other thing we can do to get the most out of these systems is partly to know, as Lori Lawrence mentioned, the bias. We know what their shortcomings are, what they sometimes mess up on. And so watching out for those things, from things as simple as just remembering that these systems might seem so sophisticated on one answer, and then they might be just dead wrong the next moment in a way that seems so dumb. So I like to remember little examples like asking it to count the number of letters in a word. And here I asked how many N's are in the word counter, and it said the word counter has 2 N's in it. You know, it can be very confident and deceptively confident. So what does that look like for teaching assistants? I have definitely noticed that sometimes, like if you give it the text leveler and you want it to summarize a piece for a certain grade level, it might get the summary wrong. It might miss the main point. So, and there was one case where it missed the main point of a New York Times opinion piece that I gave it. And it tried to summarize it for 4th graders, and it really missed it. And similarly, if you use there's this refresh my knowledge where you can sort of chat with it about your subject matter before class. And if you're asking it something that's very specific or something that's very recent, especially, you know, it could get something wrong anytime, but those are times when it especially will. And again, it'll be super confident. So I asked it, like, what is the immersion preschool policy on Spanish and English use at school, at my son's school? And it just confidently gave me the wrong answer. So just watching for those things with a little sense of humor, it can be kind of fun, I think, to catch it and just like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with a machine. It's gonna do those things. Unfortunately, as other people mentioned, it is biased in ways that could actually be harmful in our teaching practice. Seems like it might be less biased because it's a machine, but since it's trained to predict, like, what would the humans say next? It's trained on our data, on our text from the internet. And so it picks up on whatever patterns are there. And we know that the internet is sort of doesn't even represent global humanity in a proportionate way. And there's certainly bias in that text. And so, you know, what does that look like for teaching assistants? You know, most of the time I tried the make it relevant assistance, where it'll ask you, you know, to give it something about your class, so that it can make the topic relevant to them in some way, or suggest an activity that would make it feel more relevant. And it definitely has the potential to stereotype in there. Most of the ones I tried, I didn't consider it to be biased. I could be wrong, but I did see this one example where it seemed to imply, I asked it for to make a lesson about supply and demand relevant for a class that was predominantly Black. And one of the suggestions was to focus on popularity and pricing of products in industries like music or fashion. And it said, this activity encourages students to apply economic concepts to areas they are passionate about. It's like, well, hold on here. Like, let's not assume that you AI system know what areas these students are passionate about just from knowing their race. That's, you know, we should be past that. That was disturbing to me. So, you know, and if we have any unconscious bias in the way that we're describing the class, that might be then amplified by the AI. So, yeah, it's definitely something to watch out for. So, and yeah, I appreciate the comment about always warning students to fact check if they are using AI. And that applies to us too. And I think it's nice to share with students how, how tempting it is to believe, or how plausible the AI output can seem, and how I'll often think it's right on first glance, and then later I'm like, wait, it's not really saying anything there. That's actually, not substantive, or it's wrong. So I think it's nice to share that with students, because we all have to develop that kind of habit of mind. And I know some folks have to go at the hour, but we do have another half hour. So I'm loving the luxury of that 90 minutes. But if you have to go, thank you so much for coming. So I want to give you a little more time for experimenting in a minute. But first, I do want to talk about other platforms that hopefully would still feel somewhat easy beyond Khanmigo Teacher Tools. And one is to point out that a lot of schools will have Copilot access. So that's actually the Microsoft chatbot through your Microsoft account. And that does have some more data protections. So that's actually through your institution, and it's been vetted for privacy and for what's happening with that data. So that's one option. If you feel like you're outgrowing the Khanmigo Teacher Tools, or there's something you can't do with it, you want to be able to upload a file, these are some places to start. Clearly, you can use ChatGPT. It does work with images and browse the internet, so it has some additional capabilities. But you could also use Claude, which is from the company Anthropic, and some folks say that is actually more sophisticated than ChatGPT. I think it's, I use that as well as ChatGPT. Someone asked for the slides, so I'm going to pop those back in the chat. And then the other ones to know about would be Perplexity AI, which is sort of a little bit more like a search engine chatbot combination. And that has a pretty decent free version. And then there's Google's Gemini as well. So just to know that those are, it's not that one is like vastly superior to another, but those are some things to try out, to be aware of. And, things that I have found to be most useful, and sort of easy go-to things to do with it as teaching assistants. One of the top ones is coming up with examples of class concepts, new examples that I could share in class, either for an activity or for a test or for discussion. And the capacity to tailor those to a theme of the class is really nice. So, here's an example where I tested it on, statistics, use of regression analysis, but let's tell it what to focus on. And we could have said regression analysis and Spider-Man, right? So it could be fun and playful with students, or it could be a more serious theme. This was super helpful to me last semester, because I wanted to give a final exam, and I wanted something parallel to the kind of argument students had really already worked with in my textbook. But I know how long it took me to write that sample argument. It took me, a good chunk of a summer. I mean, that's maybe not that much, but it probably took me some like 10 hours in terms of drafts. And so I knew I couldn't do that for the final exam, and I certainly couldn't write 3 new sample essays. But I was able, with some nudging and pushing and revision, to get 3 sample arguments that were pretty good, pretty parallel to the one they had already analyzed in the textbook. And they were themed around things that we had discussed in class that were related to AI. And I could give them a variety so they could pick which one they were more interested in. And I was really happy with that. I wouldn't have been able to offer that type of final exam otherwise. So you can see, like, the exam and the chat session if you want there from the slides. They're linked. Another thing I wasn't able to do without AI, but I was with AI, was to create a class activity with a lot of examples for them to work with. In this case, they were analyzing tone. And it just, I would have had to do something way more open-ended, but I got the sense that they liked working with those examples, and it made it very concrete for them. Since they didn't have to come up with them on their own, they could really see the textbook concepts illustrated directly in those examples. And there I got part of I got 3 ideas for what activity to do. I got the examples from Claude, and I wasn't accepting anything just, okay, I take what you give me. I was picking and choosing from different versions it gave me. But I did end up with something that I think the students really, really got into. And, the nice thing about working with any of those chatbots is that you can attach files, and you can usually browse the internet too. So in this case, I asked it to compare my syllabus to the state course outline, the course description. And I attached my syllabus, but I just gave it the link for the state course description, and it was able to access that. So it was, it's easier to work with outside sources in one of these chatbots. The other thing that's been a big game changer that my best friend and I have talked about a lot, she's a sociology professor, is working with audio. So getting some help to clean up a transcript of a meeting or a YouTube video that I've assigned, asking for bullet points, summarizing the transcript, or just asking it to clean up the transcript into a smooth, paragraph form. And one should double check it for those things, but it allows me to sometimes talk to myself and record it, and then I have a brainstorm of text that I can have it clean up. And in the sense of like taking out typos and the messiness of a transcript. So that's been another really useful thing. And I think we talked about voice mode with the Khanmigo. So just to know that that's also available in ChatGPT, even the free version, and it's in Gemini as well. I think that's for subscribers though. The other thing that feels like kind of a no-brainer, like a use that AI is really suited to, is just when we're talking about formatting, when I already have the ideas, but I need to put it in a new form. So, I've written about this concept, but now here's a new funding proposal format that they want. How do I translate from one format to another? It can save some time with that. And I don't feel worried that it's, putting ideas in my document, because I feel like I've already got the ideas and it's helping me with the formatting. The other thing that I was talking to a friend who's an English instructor, and we were talking about like things that we struggle with as far as like technical glitches in Canvas. And I was like, oh, well, I'm using ChatGPT for that. I'm using the chatbot for tech support. Not that I don't ever use the help, I do, but there are times where it gives me a more customized answer that works. It doesn't always work, but often it does. And the nice thing with tech support is that you can test it, see if it works, and it can give you 4 different things to try. So it, how do I get PowerPoint to offer design suggestions if it's refusing? It does customize in a way that I'm not going to find on a discussion forum on the internet. I won't necessarily find the exact same problem I'm having. And I can also give it a screenshot of whatever I'm dealing with. And it's gotten to be pretty decent at interpreting screenshots. So if I'm really overwhelmed by the word interface online and I just can't wrap my head around where to go for this thing that I want, and I'm getting really frustrated, I have found it to be very helpful for that kind of situation. Oh, I don't want to miss something. If there's something in the Q&A, it's not coming up for me for some reason.
The question is, in your experience, are there any of the paid versions of these tools worthwhile?
The paid versions. I do currently pay for Claude and ChatGPT at that $20 a month level. But my friend just pays for one and uses the free version of another. I think it depends how much you want to use it, because at this point, ChatGPT does offer you a limited number of searches with their more advanced model. So at this moment, you can get a small amount of use at that high level of sophistication still for free. But if you're starting to use it more, then I do find it to be significant. Also with ChatGPT, you can now access their more advanced reasoning models at a limited number of queries per month. And I have found that to be useful as well. Yeah. There's a question, does Khanmigo have a DPA? And I don't know the answer to that, I confess. Is that a data privacy agreement? I think that would be, I would assume so, because they were vetted by Instructure and by CVC OEI and also by my local College of Marin. So I think that they've been vetted as far as accessibility and privacy pretty thoroughly. One more really low-hanging fruit use of AI is for alt text for images. So we know, if you teach an online course and you know how long it can take to provide decent alt text for all your images. And I do find that it speeds that up quite a bit for me to upload the image to ChatGPT, or even just to take a screenshot of the whole screen and to say, give me alt text for the image that's in the slide. And then I will review it and edit it. But often I don't have to edit it very much, I have found lately. So that allows me to put in things like screenshots without spending 10 minutes trying to describe everything that's in that screenshot. We can ask it for feedback on professional communications like email, or we can ask it for things like, how might this appear to a human? If I'm having a concern about how does my syllabus come across to students, is it intimidating? It doesn't know, but we can ask it to say something and we can see if it resonates. If it points us to a particular sentence that might be off-putting, we make that judgment that it is. I would specify alt text to be under 120 words. Yeah, you would need to specify. You can also tell it to browse the internet for guidelines for alt text and then write, alt text according to those guidelines. Oh, great. That's good to know that Claude did a great job captioning videos. So, you know, as a teacher aspiring to follow a new pedagogical practice or philosophy, that is another use where we could say, you know, here's this handout from a workshop I just went to, and I'd like to know if I'm using this kind of language in my syllabus, or, you know, where are some places where I could apply this in my course materials. And I think this is my last tip, but you know, if you're not sure how a chatbot can help or whether it can help, I love that we can just ask it, how can you help me with this task? What do you need to know to help me with this task? So we can kind of offload some of the stress of figuring out what our options are by asking the system itself. And I found that to work pretty well. Sometimes I'll just say, ask me questions about this, you know, paper I'm writing, or proposal that I need to put together. And it can do that. So somebody mentioned Nectar, but this is a list of other places to look for ideas besides Khanmigo Teacher Tools. There are various other sites that are focused on educators and supporting educators. Magic School, EduAid, some are more K-12 focused. Boodlebox and PlayLab are about sort of custom bots for education, and about educators sharing what we're doing and sharing our prompts for those bots. So I think those are places to browse, you know, even if we're not going to sign up for something paid. They often have, like Boodlebox has a whole library of different bots, and so does PlayLab. So that's all I'm going to throw at you. Let's take 10 minutes, if you're willing to stay till 2:30, to try something out with one of these bots, or to ask me questions, and to share again something that you would either were able to try just now, or that you want to try next, if there's not time to try it. So if you go to that same poll and just press the arrow key, it'll take you to the next slide, which is just another space for sharing experiments. And I guess the other way I approach it is like, where am I stuck in my teaching work? Where is there something that I would like to be able to do that I just don't feel like I can? And is there a way that one of these systems could support me to do a little bit more, without feeling like I'm going beyond my limits, right? So I'm gonna give you a little time, but welcome questions or other suggestions for things that you've found to be useful. I'm seeing a question about the captioning of videos. I mean, YouTube does do automatic captions, as does Canvas Studio, but we have to edit those. I don't know. I'd be curious if Claude does a better job than those systems. You know, another way to caption videos is with Otter AI, which just will do a transcript of whatever you're playing at the moment. Let's see. And yeah, don't forget to complete the survey. That would be wonderful. And before everybody goes, I did want to share some further resources that are in the slide deck. So we have my OER text about AI that's aimed at students, but really is for anybody. And then, of course, the other big questions, academic integrity and AI, how we might invite students to use it, AI for research assistants, So I'm just sharing slide decks from other presentations that I give on those topics. And you might be aware of this, but CVC at One has this whole playlist of AI-focused webinar recordings. So this is a treasure trove. You know, Jose Antonio Bowen, Michelle Pacansky-Brock, so many great people. And there are some wonderful ones coming up as well. I'm going to give two more. One that will talk more about ethics and what we can do about things like copyright and source attribution. And so that will delve into sort of some more ethical issues around AI assistance. And then there's a final workshop where we get into things like custom bots and advanced prompting techniques. So we'll kind of hopefully find some more fun and interesting uses that go beyond what we would just imagine most easily. Great, thank you. Yeah, feel free to share those slide decks. And yeah, and maybe just as a kind of a last food for thought, I wanted to raise this question of, you know, if we're using AI for teaching assistance, when should we disclose that? Either to students or to colleagues? And just to say that, you know, I think it can be easy to feel self-conscious or shy about disclosing it. But I think it's actually a chance to kind of model transparency for students and to say, look, I'm asking them to be transparent about what is AI, what they did with AI, and so I'm going to be transparent. And it also shows that we're aware of AI and we're learning about it. It might lead to some more open conversations about what's appropriate in AI use or suggest some uses. Question about sample disclosure statements. Let's see, I put a link earlier in the slides to those worksheets that I created that have AI use statements. And it's just very, very simple. I'll just label it AI use statement. And then I will say, I used AI for this, but not for that. The text is my own. And then often I'll include a link to a chat session transcript so that, you know, somebody could actually see what interaction I had and where the text came from. Yeah, I can grab that link in a minute too, if you want. So, you know, for some things I feel it's important not to use AI. I want to be able to say that I wrote the feedback that I'm giving on their essays, and to distinguish that from other times when I might invite them to engage with AI feedback. But for like a worksheet, it feels very appropriate to have used AI, and I could explain to them why, and I can disclose that. So I just kind of leave that open. But, you know, it gets down to that question of like, well, I know there are moments when I care if something is AI or not, when I'm reading it and when I wonder. And so, you know, as I'm using AI, I want to think about my audience and whether they care, whether they would want to know, or whether it's important that there's some sense of a human having an intention behind those words, or if they just want to know that I checked it. So lots to follow up on. Yes, I hope I didn't overwhelm you. The purpose was not to overwhelm. So even if you take like one thing away, that's great. And you know, I guess the message overall is just to try one thing at a time, be respectful of our own feelings and bandwidth, and but not to be intimidated. We do have the skills already to work with these systems really well, maybe better than some of the engineers, because we work with language and relationship and communication. So just to be creative and bold and try things as we feel like they would support us in our teaching goals. Wonderful. And yeah, thanks for sharing the survey link. If you would want to do that, and you can visit my website, and I am on social media too much. So if you want to get on there, I do feel like I learn a lot about AI, and there are a lot of supportive educators on there, especially on LinkedIn. And we have a hashtag on LinkedIn that Michelle Pacansky-Brock started for CCC AI Learn. So you can actually click the link to follow that and see those posts in your feed of things that are of interest for educators about AI. Yeah. So.
Can I just take a few minutes to make the final announcement, and we'll stay on in case anyone has some final questions. Thank you everyone so much for attending the webinar. Thank you so much, Anna. There's so much valuable information as always. Before you all go, please check the chat for the survey link and take a moment to complete it. You'll receive a copy of your responses, which can serve as verification for your attendance. And if you encounter any issues, you can reach out to support@cbc.edu. We encourage you to explore other webinars that we'll be offering throughout the term. The link for upcoming webinars will be shared in the chat. I'll go ahead and drop that right now. And then lastly, this webinar's recording and associated slides will be available at the CVC at One webinar website. So please allow for a few days for captioning before they're posted. Thank you all so much for being here today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Well, there's a question, how does Otter AI work? It's one of several apps that you can record and it will transcribe. So it's mostly geared to meetings, but it can be used for individuals. Like I'll use it on a walk or a run. I'll talk to my phone and then I have a transcript of what I've said. And another one for meetings is Granola. There's Audio Pen, which takes notes for you, I think. So yeah, there are a bunch of those apps. And then it's built into other things like Khanmigo or ChatGPT as well.
It's amazing how different research will become, because I remember having to transcribe my PhD research myself, which took hours upon hours. So it's unbelievable how fast technology is moving.
Yes, I was thinking about that too, but that's one use where I feel like it really is good for to have different modalities is easier. You can switch between speaking and text. You know, it means that when I need to move my body, I could actually be walking and writing at the same time.
All right, looks like we have one more minute.
Hashtag on LinkedIn, yeah. Let me grab that. Put it in the chat. There's the link to follow the hashtag on LinkedIn. Which AI system is good for images, not just words? I mean, ChatGPT will generate images. I think Gemini also does. I haven't experimented a lot with the quality of those. I know Midjourney is a big one for images. Stable Diffusion is another one, but Firefly is Adobe's. Canva has a great reputation for images. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, we're right at the 2:30 mark. Again, thank you all so much, and thank you, Anna. Hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.